But my name is Kimberly Rodgers. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and a registered play therapist and a supervisor of play therapists. And as far as putting this talk together, hopefully I'm addressing what you guys are looking for. I was trying to make it as informative as possible, but not too elementary. But it seems like since you're minoring in psychology, maybe you'll at least get something new out of it. So if it's stuff that you already know, then we'll just kind of go through quickly. But this is me, and that's in my office. I'm in private practice right now, and the name of my practice is Monarch Therapy. So I'm just down the street, actually, just like a block away. It's very, very convenient. Okay, so this is the trivia thing. So we're just kind of do like a test to see everybody there. And you're participating too, right?
Sure.
Okay. And you can participate too. Okay, so my first question is to start with what it's not. So my first question is, what other types of therapists are there? Because when I introduce myself to someone, they ask me, what do you do for a living? It's kind of difficult for me to answer sometimes because I'm like, well, I'm a social worker, but my job is right now as a therapist and a play therapist. So when I say I'm a therapist, what do people usually think of? Like, what do you guys usually think of if you weren't in like the psychology field? What kind of therapist?
Maybe a physical therapist.
Physical therapist.
I think psychiatry.
I would think a shrink or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. I get a lot of massage. Oh, you do massage? Are you occupational? Speech therapist. Sometimes people confuse me as a speech therapist, just from me saying the word therapist. And then I have a couple friends that are in respiratory therapy school. So if I'm with those friends, then people automatically assume that's what I mean. But, and then shrink is another. Or psychiatrist. Behavior analyst is another one. That's it doesn't have a therapy word, but it's kind of the same ballpark. And then guidance counselor, because I used to work at a school doing school-based counseling. So a lot of people thought that I was a guidance counselor. I said, well, there was a guidance counselor at the school, but it's a little different because it's getting into the deeper issues than guidance counseling. Okay, so as far as defining psychotherapy, how would you guys define it? It's kind of hard to define.
Yeah, I really have no idea.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Well, according to the Florida statutes, like Chapter 491 is who governs basically what I do as a licensed clinical social worker. So they say a psychotherapist is a clinical social worker, marriage and family therapist, or a mental health counselor licensed pursuant to this chapter, which I've got more information after this about what that means to be licensed. And I'll give you notes too. I don't want you cheating yet. So this is like my concept of a therapist is my role, I believe, is to guide and empower people to overcome difficulties through their own process rather than just telling people what to do. Because I'll have some friends that'll come to me with emotional difficulties or struggles they're going through, and they'll say, well, what would you tell your client? And I say, well, I would help the client figure out their own resolution rather than me telling them what to do. That's kind of obvious, but I just want to point that out. So this is a lot of information. We won't go through all of this, but this is Florida Statutes Chapter 491, how they define mental health counseling, because they put social workers, mental health counselors, and marriage and family therapists under the same like statutes as far as the government, but they split it up like each profession. So for mental health counseling, it basically talks about I kind of bolded the most important parts. They evaluate, assess, diagnose, and treat emotional and mental dysfunctions or disorders, behavioral disorders, interpersonal relationships, sexual dysfunction, alcoholism, and substance abuse. And it includes psychotherapy, hypnotherapy, and sex therapy. It also includes counseling, behavior modification, consultation, client-centered advocacy, crisis intervention, and the provision of needed information and education, so it's like psychoeducation. It's a lot of jibber jabber. Hello, welcome. Okay, so that's mental health counseling, which is the same kind of thing as social work. This is a separate one for social work, and it's very similar, although some of the terms are different. But basically, it encompasses counseling, advocacy, crisis intervention, and then also research. Discuss that farther down here. A lot of information. And then with social work, as a social worker, the National Association of Social Workers, NASW, they are a pretty strong organization that protect social workers and help advocate for the profession. And this came out 2 years ago, 2008, where they went through the legal system to protect the title of social workers, because there's a lot of issues, especially with Department of Children and Families, where there was a lot of neglect even of children that were already in the foster care system, and people who are working for DCF or other organizations. And this is not saying anything negative about DCF, because they do a lot of good work. But there are some problems where some kids were not being served appropriately, and they're saying, oh, these social workers are supposed to be doing their job, and they weren't really social workers. They were just in the role of a social worker, but some of them had degrees in like psychology or art, or not psychology, but history or art or something like completely unrelated to counseling or mental health, and so they weren't properly trained to actually do the work. So now there's a rule. This is under the statutes. It says that you, in order to be a social worker, you have to have a bachelor's or master's degree in social work from an accredited school. And then if you break that rule, basically, then it's punishable. It's a first degree felony. So it's pretty severe.
Is that misrepresenting yourself? It sounds like
Right.
that you are doing some social work capacity and you have no background in that.
Right, and hopefully organizations like nonprofit agencies and state and federal agencies are paying closer attention to that. I didn't really do any research into this to see if anybody's actually, been convicted from this, but I'd be curious to look. Okay, so besides social work, what other types of education apply to the field of mental health? Just some obvious ones, because I'm in the
Mental health
psychology
counseling,
club.
psychology.
Mental health counseling, psychology. There were a couple the other field that's under the chapter 491 that I went over. Mental health counseling, social work, and marriage and family therapy. And then some schools are becoming creative with the names of the programs, like counseling psychology. This is an applied psychology program, right?
Yep. And we will have a master's in degree leading to a mental health counseling degree.
Okay.
Licensure, basically.
Okay. And then there's also some other private programs that specialize in like Christian counseling or biblical counseling. So you can't just limit it to these 4 that I have up there, but kind of captures it to the extent that I could without overwhelming you with anywhere. So then there's different degrees, obviously, of education. Bachelor's degree would usually allow someone to do these types of roles like advocacy, case management, assessment, support groups, crisis intervention. And then if you have a master's degree, then you could do more of the therapy, which is like getting more in depth into the emotional difficulties. And then you could do independent practice if you're licensed. Actually, independent practice should just be down here for licensure. But you could do independent practice if you were still getting supervised by a licensed person, as long as that licensed supervisor was in agreement with the supervisee being in private practice. And then doctorate degree, course, doctorate degree, master's degree, licensure, that's all gonna expand the job possibilities. So that's kind of obvious. Okay, and then for licensure, which for me, I'm a licensed clinical social worker, so that means that I was required to get extra supervision after getting my master's degree, and they've changed some of the requirements since I graduated in 2003. Because when I graduated, you had to get your supervision for 2 hours and for 2 years, and then you take the exam. But now, which is much better, I think, so you can take the exam after you graduate from your master's program, so that the information is still fresh. And then you still have to get your 2 years of supervision. And so these are the basic requirements, and these are pretty similar across the board, social work and mental health counseling. To be a licensed psychologist, you have to have a doctorate degree, and their supervision is probably more extensive than this, I would think. And then as far as the registered play therapist credential, that is through the Association for Play Therapy, which is a national organization, and they have special requirements for supervision that's specific to play therapy and experience that's specifically with children and play therapy. And then to be a supervisor play therapist, you have to have even more training, experience, and supervision. I didn't include all the specifics because it's kind of confusing. And if you're interested, you can go on the Association for Play Therapy website. It has all those. Okay, so as far as specializations, and I've listed a few of them already, but what other different population specializations can you get further education or training in the mental health field? So I mentioned play therapy. What other specializations are in there?
Substance abuse.
Substance abuse, yes.
Forensics.
Forensics. Are you guys in the psychology field? Because I know she's minoring in psychology. Are you? What's your
I go for physician assistant.
Okay, so it's kind of in the medical field. What about you?
Right now I'm a psychology major, but I'm switching to allied.
Okay.
But still the same kind
Okay. So hopefully this is still interesting to you guys, even if you don't stay in the field. But I'll just show you the list of everything. This is not everything, but a lot of different specializations. Play therapy, substance abuse addictions, which you said, sexual abuse, trauma, couples, counseling, sex therapy, families, infant mental health. This is a new thing that's starting to grow down here in Southwest Florida too. There's a, I forgot the name of the association, but there's like a Association for Infant Mental Health, and that's basically like working more with the parent, with the baby. Like say if it's a child who's very colicky or not eating, or there's something wrong with the baby, you can't really do counseling with the baby, I don't think. So you do more work with the parent and look and see what's going on with the parent-child relationship. And you do more systems work too to help them get set up with services within the environment. And the children, adolescents, adults, geriatric populations, that's a big area down here, obviously. Women's issues, men's, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender. And now they've added a Q to that, or they're starting to, I've heard, which is interesting to me. I was very surprised, and I didn't believe it at first, but it's queer. Have you heard more?
Yes, the old term was queer, the new term is questioning. If you're questioning your sexuality.
Because I've heard some people, even that are in that population, they say, well, yeah, people can call me queer and I'm fine with it.
Yeah, it's a derogatory term. They're saying those that are questioning, that are uncertain, sometimes the adolescent age group or even teens or things like that. So even if you don't associate, but it's causing you problems in your daily life, then yeah, we can counsel that.
Interesting. See, there's things that I'm learning every day.
I just took a seminar. That's the only reason I'm.
No, I appreciate that. I appreciate that information. Military and veterans, spiritual focus and religious focus, and that would be like the Christian counseling or biblical counseling that we talked about. And not necessarily from a Christian perspective, but there's also counseling specific to other religions. Eating disorders, grief and loss, multicultural issues, disaster, crisis, child welfare, and many more. Many more. Okay, so as far as what I do, I'm a play therapist. So what is play therapy? Does anybody have any clue what that is? Or what it's not?
You just, like all the pictures, pretty much try to open the door and doing other activities with the child, like, yeah, playing with them basically and doing different exercises to kind of get out what could be bothering them or what the issue is.
Yes, that is definitely along the line. As you did say, it's like sitting down and talking to them, because the child isn't really going to sit and talk on a couch. Well, some kids actually do with me, but that's not their language. Verbal language is not their natural language. So play therapy is using their natural language of play. So it is like a bridge to addressing the issues. But it's even more, it's like more complex than that, because you use the toys as a way of communicating feelings,
Would it be like
behaviors.
even certain people in their life at that point? Would they associate it with like a certain toy or something, you know, if they were pretending one was what would one say to the other? Or something like
Exactly,
that?
yeah, like the role-playing, using metaphors and symbolism, it's all related to play therapy. The Association for Play Therapy is APT, so they say it's the systematic use of a theoretical model to establish an interpersonal process wherein trained play therapists use the therapeutic power to play to help clients prevent or resolve psychosocial difficulties and achieve optimal growth and development. That's really wordy for what we're talking about, I think, but hopefully you get the concept of it. It's a safe and non-threatening way. Like if I ask a kid directly, like, how are you feeling, or what happened at home last night, they might not feel comfortable opening up in verbal language like we use. So they might act it out through my dollhouse or sand tray, and I'll talk about sand tray too. And there's different types. There's non-directive play therapy, which is more like a child would come into my play therapy room and they'll just play, and I would observe and comment, like kind of translate it into verbal language of what they're doing, like observations. I don't specialize as much in the non-directive. I do a little bit of non-directive and directive, which is like if I know that a kid's coming to me for family-related issues, then I will encourage some tools or activities that are specific to what the child's going through. So it's just a different approach, non-directive versus directive, versus the combination, which is what I do. And so in my office I have toys, art supplies, puppets, dolls, dollhouse, Play-Doh. There's another counselor in my office suite. She has an office right next to me, Melissa Rounds, and she does a lot of Play-Doh creations with the kids, and she'll use that as a metaphor. Like, so what is, she'll ask the child, what they want to make, and they'll make all the different things. She's very creative with it. She'll make hot dogs or tacos, and then she'll talk about what's going on and relate it to whatever they made. Like, taco is like hard on the outside, but soft on the inside, kind of like, a kid who's got this wall up or this mask and put inside, they have squishy feelings. So it's cool. Play therapy is fun because there's a lot of fun stuff you can do with it. But you are also dealing with difficult stuff through play therapy, so it's not always fun, but it's usually try to be fun. So these are some important concepts that I think are associated with play therapy. Helping children learn that feelings are okay and allowing a safe and non-threatening way to express their feelings, beliefs, concerns, and thoughts. And also teaches self-regulation so that they can have control over themselves. and teaches them healthy coping skills. Helps them overcome challenges, we're going to talk about that. Develop a sense of mastery and increase self-esteem. And you'll see that more with the sand trade that we'll talk about more. And this is another key concept with kids. A lot of times kids think that everything revolves around them. They're very egocentric, so the whole world revolves around me. And with that way of thinking, a lot of times they think that it's their fault if something happens. Like if mom and dad broke up, well, maybe if I was doing better at school, or if I didn't get in a fight with my brother, then mom and dad would still be together, or dad wouldn't have hit mom if I got an A in my class. So it kind of helps them learn that it's not their fault.
What's the age group of,
Good question. We're coming to that. I think it's a couple slides after this. So what issues can be addressed through play therapy? What kind of issues do you think over time?
Divorce, abuse.
Problems at school. Problems at school.
bullying?
I mentioned a few others.
Maybe sexual abuse.
Sexual abuse, self-esteem, we talked about in here. Transitional issues, like I've gotten quite a few referrals for kids, especially like middle school or high school, that have just moved here from another state, and they're having difficulty adjusting. Sometimes other family issues, like a parent who's an alcoholic or using substances, or a family member that's in jail and the child's having difficulty coping with that. Grief and loss, that's another big one that I get referrals for. Depression, social skills, bullying, that's always a concern. That was more so when I worked in the school system. I was getting a lot of referrals for that. Okay, so this is your question. How old are my clients that are in play therapy? What do you guys think?
2 to 15 maybe.
Okay. 2 to 15, what do you think?
I would think maybe up to 16 or 17, because not quite adults yet.
Okay. What do you think?
I would think just a little bit younger, because I know myself at 16 I would not like therapy. I think I was like old enough to talk about it, so maybe 3 to 4.
That's what I was thinking, somewhere in 13 or 14.
It's like,
He agrees.
I'll agree with everybody. Okay. You may be surprised, actually you guys would probably all be surprised. I do some play therapy techniques with adults as well, and teenagers, but not all the stuff. I do more the sand tray, which we'll talk about more after this. But for me personally, I work with children ages 3 and up. My preference is 4 and up, but sometimes I've gotten referrals for 3 and up, and that's just my preference. There are some play therapists that specialize in the infant mental health stuff that we were talking about, and will do more work with the parent-child relationship. Tara Moser, she's, is it Jeff?
Mm-hmm.
Jeff's wife, and she's in private practice. What's Jeff's wife? She's in private practice in Cape Coral, and she works with kids, I think 2 and up. So it just depends on the person's comfort level. For me, I like to have some kind of cognitive ability to work with. Okay, so teenagers, adults, and then I also do play therapy in all different settings, individual sessions, families, groups, and couples sometimes. I don't work with a lot of couples, but sometimes if I have an adult that's working through childhood stuff, like say an adult that was sexually abused as a child and hasn't completely resolved it yet, then I'll work with the adult and then encourage her to bring her husband or partner into the session once in a while to work on coping with that. Okay, so I've mentioned sand tray or sand play a few times. This is something that I really enjoy, and I've gotten a lot of extra training in it besides just graduate school. So does anybody know what sand tray or sand play is?
You could be
Do you know a little
uncovering
bit?
things and burying things and building things and breaking things down. I don't know, just thinking of it from a logical sense of what you're doing there, allowing them to cover things up and unbury and replace things and build things. And it seems kind of almost feng shui. You know, you think of I can't think of what it's called, but they have their trays, even in someone's office, they'll have a little tray, and you just...
Yeah, I've got a little mini one too that some adults will just work with while I'm talking with them if they don't want to do the actual sand tray. So it's definitely, I see a lot of what you were talking about, the building, creating, burying, unburying. It's a type of play therapy, and I have a whole collection of figures, like sand tray miniatures. There's figures that represent people, animals, vehicles, buildings, spiritual figures, mythical figures, walls, fences, trees, anything you can think of, like in the real world that we live in, and also the imaginary or fantasy world. And so the only instruction usually that I get, like when I'm first working with someone on the sand tray, is for them to just look and see what all I have, like take some time to just look, and then select whichever figures are appealing to you in whatever way, like whichever ones you want to use, and then you build a world in this kind of tray of sand about that big, about that high. And so you just place the figures however you want. There's no right or wrong way to do it. It's just a way for them to kind of explore their psyche at a deeper level. And it's really cool because when we try to describe things or explore emotions or difficulties with verbal language, even as adults, it doesn't always work. So this helps you to access like a deeper level of the brain where you're able to work through stuff without necessarily using language if you don't want to use language. But usually after they build something, then I'll ask them to share. Like, is there anything that's coming up as you're looking at or as you build it? And it helps them to see their world from a different perspective. And it's a tangible perspective. And they may, like after they've seen it and they created it, then they may decide to add more things to it or take stuff away or move stuff around. And so it just gives them control over their little space. And a lot of times they can relate it themselves even before I can to their real life situation. So it's very cool. And I'll give you handouts that explain it better, but I'm just trying to speed up a little bit. So this is my collection, well, part of my collection. I actually took that today, took that picture today. And then this is one that I did through a training. And I really like this quote because it explains it probably better than I did. Often the hands know how to solve a riddle with which the intellect has wrestled in vain. Carl Jung. And he is definitely into the Eastern philosophy. And so I usually say sand tray, but some people say sand play because that's specifically Jungian. Jung is this guy here. It's focused on like symbolism and metaphors.
Just to back up, with all of that stuff, do you find that some of the kids are overwhelmed with the amount of stuff and the fact that they don't have that many toys, and that, not that they can't get to the therapy, but they can't get past all the stuff? Like, there's so much cool stuff here, and, like, they like coming, but that, I don't know, do you ever...
That was my first concern, actually. The first sand tray training I went to, the trainer, her name is Teresa Kessler, she's amazing. If you guys ever go further, she's in New Mexico, but she has trainings in Florida once a year in the summer. She's in Daytona Beach, and she has tons. Like, my collection doesn't even compare to the collection that she brings to the trainings. So and some of my friends went to her house where she does the real training, real huge training, and so she's covered everything. I say I'm a hoarder, in a positive way, because once you start collecting, then you see everything anything symbolizes something. So for me, I thought the same thing, but then once I did it myself, because part of the healing process, learning how to use it with people, is to be able to experience it yourself. So when I did the training, you go to what you need. So it wasn't overwhelming for me, and I've never had a client say, oh, this is too much stuff. Like, they usually just pick and choose what they need to. But that's a good point, because I thought that it would be. EMDR, does anybody know about EMDR? Somebody's gonna have to tell me when we need to wrap up. Okay, EMDR is another therapy approach that I specialize in, and it's extra training again beyond the graduate level, but it's a type of therapy that is specifically for trauma. So it's an acronym for this long phrase: eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing. So basically, I'll try to explain it in a nutshell, because I could talk for hours about EMDR and CNJ actually. So it helps, again, like to work through the trauma at a deeper level. The things that I like about Santray and EMDR is that they get the right and left hemispheres of the brain to interact together. So like with the Santray, I'll ask people to not think, like just let your emotional, creative side of your brain work and take over while you're building your tray. And then once we talk about the tray, then we'll access the cognitive, like, thinking part of your brain as the brain translates it into verbal language. So with EMDR, it's the same, well, I can't say same kind of thing, but similar concept, because it's getting the right and left side of the brain to work together to process a trauma that's happened that you can't talk about or process with verbal language. So say if someone was traumatized, like a rape victim, or someone who was in a car accident and their family member died, a lot of times if the trauma is not processed properly, then they will feel like they're reliving it. Like they'll get triggered. Like say I could see that chair and I remember the color of the chair was the color the person was wearing that raped me, or something like that. Like they get triggered at just a split second, and so they feel like they're reliving it, like the same thoughts. Yeah, it's like flashbacks, the same thoughts are associated with it, the same body sensations, like their heart starts racing. I notice it sometimes when I'm driving, because I had several bad car accidents that were not my fault. I'm a pretty safe driver. But I'll notice sometimes if somebody is trying to pass me and they get too close, my heart starts racing and my hands start sweating and I feel like I'm reliving it. I still need to do EMDR for myself on the car accidents, but I did it with some other things that helped, helped process it, and it helps alleviate the negative thoughts that we have about ourselves after trauma. And it's kind of confusing. When I explain it to clients, it sounds a little confusing too, but it works. And there's a lot of research on EMDR, a lot of research is still being done to prove its effectiveness and how it works. And I guess like to make it more concrete, you would actually be thinking about the event, and you would follow your eyes back and forth with my hands, or what I find more beneficial is tapping, like you would close your eyes and think about it, and I would ask you, certain things to guide you along, and I would tap your knees back and forth. Because if you're closing your eyes, it's still the tactile stimulation. Some people use the auditory. There's a machine that you can use in it, but kind of like the hearing test that buzzes back and forth. So that kind of summarizes it. Is that kind of confusing, but so you get it a little bit? Okay. Let's see. So what kind of roles or work settings do we work in psychotherapy? Schools. Private practice. Hospitals. Hospice too. A lot of, actually this is a big area for hospice social workers. The VA, military, substance abuse, employee assistance. And I was talking to Elena
Mm-hmm.
about the therapists that you guys have through Hodges too. You guys have access to therapists through Hodges if you need it, which is a wonderful service. It's great. And it's not limited. When I went to school, University of Central Florida was limited to like 6 sessions. So it's cool that it's unlimited. So lots of different settings. I worked, before going to private practice, I worked at a crisis center. And then before that, at school, doing school-based counseling. And then also with adoptions and foster care. Okay, so I like this question. If I'm in private practice, that means I'm my own boss and can do what I want, right?
Sort of.
Sort of.
The answer to the APA to some degree.
Here's me laughing, because I do. I can set my own schedule. I can decide who I want to work with. But there's a lot of governing authorities over me still. And every state has different laws and rules. I talked about Chapter 491, which is the governing body over clinical social work, mental health counseling, and marriage and family therapy. So they put limits on, what I can do and what I can do under the role that I have as a licensed professional, even before I got licensed. And if somebody decided to sue me, they would probably go through the court. But it's not going to happen. Now there's other agencies or organizations that also govern what I do from an ethical standpoint, and that would be NASW, which is the National Association of Social Workers. Association of Social Workers. And then APA is the Association for Psychological Association. No, Association for Psychological
American.
Oh, American. That's it.
Psychological
American
Association.
Psychological Association. Yeah, so that's not my organization, so I don't remember exactly. And then as a registered play therapist, APT, the Association for Play Therapy, has requirements of me. And then EMDR-IA is the International Association for EMDR. So if I'm working towards my certification for EMDR, they have requirements for that as well. And then being self-employed, you have other requirements like federal, state, and county requirements. And I'm laughing because I knew none of this going into school. So I thought it'd be helpful, like if you guys ever decide to go into private practice doing whatever you want to do as a PA or whatever you guys do. There's a lot involved.
Do you hire like a lawyer to take care of most of that paperwork?
Yeah, you should, through my professional insurance, because I have professional liability insurance, so I have attorneys that I can contact, and I've contacted other attorneys for legal advice, so that's definitely important, and also an accountant to be able to consult with on different things. And then Collier County has tons of requirements as far as registering your business, and the state of Florida has requirements for registering your business. So my business, Monarch Therapy, is an LLC, which is a limited liability company, and that's through the state of Florida. And then there's zoning requirements, lots of different things. And then also insurance. I am an in-network provider for Blue Cross Blue Shield, so they have some stipulations as far as like how many sessions a person can come to for counseling or how much they'll pay, that kind of thing. So there's a lot involved. But it's great. I love the job. Okay, so to figure out if mental health is your calling, it sounds like it's not really for people here, but except for you. But just so you know, in case anybody else that you come across, friends, you might say, hey, you meet all these criteria, maybe you'd be a good mental health therapist or social worker. So these are just like my thoughts as I was putting this together. If you're compassionate and caring, if you're a good listener, if you're a problem solver, if you're positive, optimistic, trustworthy, because confidentiality is a huge thing that I have to keep everything private. What people tell me, I can't be a gossiper and tell my family what somebody said to me in therapy today. And then, of course, there's exceptions to confidentiality if there's a concern for risk of harm to self or others, I'm required to report that. But otherwise confidential. And if you're non-materialistic, I just put this because, especially like starting out, you're not going to make a whole lot of money, but I have a slide about that too. And then also able to handle your own emotions and challenges in healthy ways. So going to the money thing. How much money will you make in the mental health field? I can't really say like a specific amount because there's so many factors involved. Your degree level, bachelor's versus master's versus doctorate, whether you're licensed or not licensed, what kind of work setting, like nonprofits obviously are going to make less than for-profits, geographic location, and just because Naples is more expensive place to live, the jobs don't pay more, but you guys probably already know that. So these were some sites that I researched, salary.com and Indeed.com, which, by the way, Indeed.com is a great site to do job searches on when you start looking for a job, or if you're looking for a job. So the range was from what, 24,000 to 72,000. So that's what the internet said. Okay, so as far as the current trends in the world of mental health and psychotherapy, like the focus when I was in school is probably different than the focus now, and you'll probably teach me more about what the focus is or what the trends are now, but I'll just show you what I've kind of thought of. It seems like there's more holistic approaches to therapy, like connecting mind, body, and spirit. EMDR is one of those because it accesses the whole body. Like I said, I would talk for hours about it to explain that, but there's a lot more research being done into the brain, neuropsychology, and how the brain is impacted by trauma, and therapy approaches need to allow for communication between both hemispheres of the brain for complete healing. Mindfulness and yoga, and that's something that I got more training into. Last year I went through a yoga teacher training program to be able to teach yoga, and not necessarily the physical postures, but also the emotional and mental benefits of yoga, like being present in the moment. Let's see, military and VA, especially with everything that's going on in the Middle East. And then there's a lot of question about what's going to happen with healthcare reform, how that's going to impact our field. That I don't know. I'm curious to see. So does anybody feel like this in school or work? What can you guys do to take care of yourself? Self-care is very important. Exercise.
Get enough sleep.
Sleep.
Eat right.
Yes. All those good things. I don't think I put sleep on here, but that is an important thing. Exercise is supposed to be like the #1 way to beat depression, feelings of depression. Healthy eating, emotional support, some kind of hobby, if you have time for it, or make a little bit of time for it. Mindfulness is going to help too, like being present in the moment. Just like focusing on what's going on right now. Like I could be thinking, oh my gosh, what am I going to cook for dinner? Or what's going to happen tomorrow when I have like a full schedule of clients, but there's nothing I can do about it right now. Right now I'm with you guys. I need to focus on being here right now. So you can do like ground yourself in the moment, feel the floor under your feet, see the blinds, hear the whatever you call that thing, projector, yeah, those kind of things. But there's a lot more I can talk about mindfulness too. And then scheduling something fun and relaxing to do. I said acting like a dog or a child because I learn a lot from my dog, walking my dog and just like seeing her be in the moment every single moment. She sniffs the flowers. She's not mad at me for not coming home 2 hours earlier. Very cool. And then also practicing the skill of leaving work at work no matter what you do, even if you're not. And then this is another important thing. so I'm gonna finish it up. The therapists need therapy too, or even outside of the therapy field. If you're in the medical field, you need to make sure that you work on yourself, because you're not going to be able to help other people if you're not healed yourself or in the healing process. Because I don't think anybody's like 100% normal or healthy, but at least like close to it. Okay, so I've got some resources here. And then this is just a summary of me, like translating my training into practice so that you kind of get the bridge from school to real life. LCSW, I guess I told you guys about that. And then my specialties and the ages I work with. I have a few other roles that I have, like doing home studies for adoptions and surrogacy. I do that as well, and supervise mental health students and social work interns and play therapists. And then self-care. This is just stuff that I try to do myself to remind you that self-care is important no matter what role you're in, if you're in school or working or whatever. Okay, so any questions? I didn't really leave time for questions.
Thank you.
Did anybody have questions?
Thank you.
I think that's great.
We may send some interns your way.
Thank you.
Well, thank you guys for allowing me to come and talk. And since we've got a small group, I have some stress balls too if anybody gets stressed out. Does anybody need stress balls? And candy?
And on behalf of the Psychology Club and the Office of Career Development, a certificate of appreciation.
Thank